fighting for free speech, Western civilization, and delivering common sense for the American people. Ladies and gentlemen, here's Scott Jennings.
Okay, it's Tuesday, January the 27th, live from your nation's capital. Much of America remains frozen today. But is there a thaw between the Trump White House and Democrats in Minnesota? We'll discuss. And we have a live report coming up this hour from Jorge Ventura of the Daily Caller, who is documenting the radical insurrection on the ground in Minneapolis. Plus, later this hour, new polling suggests Trump may be in better shape on affordability that many Democrats want to admit. It's common sense for the American people. This is the Scott Jennings Show on Salem. And today we begin on the topic of Minnesota. Yesterday, President Trump held phone calls with both Governor Tim Walz and Minneapolis Mayor and honorary Somali pirate Jacob Frey. The president struck a conciliatory tone in his readouts of the calls, and he has dispatched Tom Homan, his White House border czar, to take control of the situation. And in breaking news, it appears that Tom Homan has already met with Tim Walz this morning. Now, Homan is respected by everyone. In fact, he once earned a medal, a literal medal, from President Barack Obama for doing such a good job at deporting people and enforcing U.S. immigration law. Homan's insertion into this situation is a good thing, and it's important to remember what the ultimate goal for Trump is in Minneapolis: for it to work much the same as ICE operations are working all over the country. What does that mean? It's very simple: cooperation. For Minnesota to give up the criminal illegal aliens who are in their jails. If Minnesota Democrats will work with ICE on transferring violent illegal aliens from the local jails into federal custody, most of the federal presence in that city will dissipate immediately. Remember, the buildup in Minneapolis of ICE and Border Patrol isn't just about catching illegal aliens. It's about protecting the ICE agents themselves. Until now, Tim Walz and Jacob Frey have ordered the local police in Minnesota to look the other way when ICE agents are being attacked by illegal aliens or radical agitators. Last week on this show, ICE Director Todd Lyons told us that local police were ordered to abandon their fellow law enforcement under attack. Let's hear cut two.
Or better yet, if we had the cooperation when our officers and agents are attacked on the street, we wouldn't see this many people out there.
Now, let me ask you this. If an ICE agent is attacked on the street, what does the Minneapolis police do?
Right now, they don't do anything.
An ICE agent comes under attack, say like the story the other day where the agent was hit with the shovels by the 3 Venezuelan nationals. The Minneapolis Police Department does not respond to help the ICE agent?
No, and that's the problem with a lot of these jurisdictions, is they're pitting law enforcement officers against each other.
Now, because of that failure to respond by local police, DHS had to send more law enforcement to guard the ICE agents who were already there. Increasingly, those agents were being attacked by illegal aliens and these angry mobs you've seen on TV. But something appears to have changed last night. For the second night in a row, rioters found a hotel they wanted to attack. 2 nights ago, local police refused to respond, leaving the hotel to be damaged and leaving one lone federal agent standing in the doorway to guard the property and his fellow federal officers. But last night, when rioters surrounded another hotel where they believe federal agents were staying, the Minnesota State Police were deployed to stop them. What changed? Now, remember, just yesterday, as I said, Trump called Governor Walz. And behold, the magic of Trump. Local police are apparently now coming to the aid of their fellow law enforcement personnel when they are under siege from violent, angry mobs. This is a positive development, and let's hope this remains the policy. The next step here would be for Mayor Frey in Minneapolis to open the jails and let ICE engage in orderly transfer of criminal illegal aliens, the worst of the worst, directly into federal custody. Often these people are simply released back into the community where ICE agents have to catch them on the streets. In fact, 470 criminal illegal aliens were released from Minnesota jails last year, and there are currently 1,360 illegal aliens sitting in Minnesota jails today. This is Tom Homan's most immediate task. We'll see if Fry and Walz will cooperate. They have whipped up a frenzied radical mob, and they have invited Antifa rioters, trained, coordinated, and well-funded, into their community. You know, Democrats didn't always think this way. In fact, let's take it from former President Barack Obama on how illegal immigration should be treated in this country. Here's the president.
There are those in the immigrants' rights community who have argued passionately that we should simply provide those who are illegally with legal status, or at least ignore the laws on the books and put an end to deportation until we have better laws. And often this argument is framed in moral terms. Why should we punish people who are just trying to earn a living? I recognize the sense of compassion that drives this argument. But I believe such an indiscriminate approach would be both unwise and unfair. It would suggest to those thinking about coming here illegally that there will be no repercussions for such a decision. And this could lead to a surge in more illegal immigration. And it would also ignore the millions of people around the world who are waiting in line to come here legally. Ultimately, our nation, like all nations, has the right and obligation to control its borders and set laws for residency and citizenship. And no matter how decent they are, no matter their reasons, the 11 million who broke these laws should be held accountable.
Former President Barack Obama. I couldn't have said it better myself. In fact, I'm having trouble saying it at all today. I apologize for the frogginess in my voice. I'm succumbing to the winter weather like many of you. Last night, by the way, the Trump administration scored a major court victory when it comes to dealing with these radical protesters who crossed the line. The 8th Circuit Court of Appeals overturned a lower court ruling that had blocked certain tactics against anti-ICE agitators. The 8th U.S. Circuit ruling allows ICE to arrest, detain, and use pepper spray on some of these violent radicals that they are encountering in the street. Notable from the ruling, and this is a quote from the ruling itself, the judges said, "We viewed the same videos the district court did. What they show is observers and protesters engaging in a wide range of conduct, some of it peaceful, much of it not. Much of it not." How is all of this playing with the American people? Does the public still support the president's stated policy of deporting all illegal aliens from the country? Well, the New York Times Siena poll out just a few days ago, overall 50% of Americans support deporting all illegal aliens, including 54% of independents. RMG polling for Neapolitan News out this week, 52% of voters said they favored the Trump administration's deportation efforts to remove illegal aliens. The latest Rasmussen poll, 62% of all voters said they favored Trump's plan to deport all illegal aliens. There is still public support for deporting illegal aliens. Nobody said getting 20 million out of the country was going to be easy. I hope Tom Homan is able to find a resolution to this situation in Minneapolis, but that resolution cannot in any way, shape, or form be a capitulation to this angry mob that has formed to nullify federal immigration law. We cannot allow angry mobs to determine whether laws are going to be followed in certain jurisdictions. If that were to happen in Minneapolis, it would be open season on federal law enforcement in New York, Chicago, L.A., and in countless other places. If you give this angry mob an inch, it will take a mile, thousands of miles actually, and if you relent on the idea that all illegal aliens must be deported, mark it down, the border will be open again. This is the Scott Jennings Show. You're listening on Salem. Pardon me for a moment. Going to take a quick drink and try to tell you about our friends at Patriot Mobile. Every day, Americans make choices that shape our country's future, right down to which cell phone provider to support. Here's what most people don't realize. Patriot Mobile is more than a wireless provider. They're an activist organization funded by selling top-tier cell phone service. They are defending our freedoms. When you send your bill off to Patriot Mobile, they give you premium cell phone service, and they invest in the causes that you care about, Christian conservative causes. Take a stand. Go to patriotmobile.com/Scott or call 972-PATRIOT. Use promo code SCOTT for a free month of service. That's patriotmobile.com/Scott or call 972-PATRIOT. Make the switch today. When we come back, Jorge Ventura from the Daily Caller is on the ground in Minneapolis. We're getting a live report. He's covering the violent insurrection. We'll hear it next, right here on Salem.
Now get the truth. It's the Scott Jennings Show.
It is Tuesday, January 27th. Common Sense for the American people. Coming up at the bottom of the hour, by the way. Interesting guests coming on. We have Morgan Murphy, national security expert, former U.S. Navy captain, and a former Trump White House official, also running for the U.S. Senate in Alabama. Morgan making his inaugural appearance here on the Scott Jennings Show. We'll talk to him in just a few minutes. We're hoping to be joined in a moment by Jorge Ventura with the Daily Caller. He is on the ground in Minneapolis. He's been documenting some of the violent radical activity. I don't know if Jorge has been unfortunately detained or not, but we're going to keep trying to get him here and get a live report from Minneapolis. In the meantime, we have some breaking news into the Scott Jennings Show. President Donald Trump has made some comments on the south lawn of the White House about Minneapolis. He was just asked for his comments and his thoughts on whether there will be an investigation into the Preddy shooting from this weekend. Let's hear from the president. This is cut number 8.
Do you believe that Alex Preddy's death was justified?
Well, you know, we're doing a big investigation. I want to see the investigation. I'm going to be watching over it. I want a very honorable and honest investigation. I have to see it myself.
That was the president on the South Lawn promising a major investigation into the Preddy shooting from this weekend. The president also made some other comments about immigration and who he is trying to get out of the country. This is cut number 9, the president just moments ago.
So we have to take murderers and drug lords and people from mental institutions that were dumped into our country through open borders of the Democrats, of Biden, and we're doing a great job.
All right, that was President Trump talking about Minneapolis and the overall issue of immigration enforcement. The big news of the day, by the way, is that Tom Homan, who President Trump announced yesterday was being dispatched to Minnesota to take control of the situation for the White House, has apparently met with Governor Tim Walz. Governor Walz's office has now, in the last few minutes, issued a statement saying that he did meet with Homan this morning and that he, quote, reiterated Minnesota's priorities, impartial investigations into the Minneapolis shootings involving federal agents, a swift, significant reduction in the number of federal forces in Minnesota, and an end to the campaign of retribution against Minnesota. The governor and Homan agreed on the need for an ongoing dialogue and will continue working towards those goals, which the president also agreed to yesterday. The governor tasked the Minnesota Department of Public Safety as the primary liaison to Homan to ensure the goals are met. Now, inside of that statement, we could make a couple of comments. Number one, if you want federal forces reduced in Minnesota, reduced in Minneapolis, it's very simple. Cooperation in the city and county jails is all that's required. That's all that has ever been required. The federal government has been begging for months for Minneapolis to open the jails and to turn over the criminal illegal aliens that are in the jails. There's like nearly 1,400 of them in the jails right now. Last year, Minnesota jails let over 400 people, criminal illegal aliens, out into the community. You got to stop doing that. And you've got to have these orderly transfers in the jails. That's the most immediate way that you would reduce the federal presence in Minnesota. What else did they say here? The end of the campaign of retribution. That's strong words from somebody who has compared the enforcement of federal immigration law to the Battle of Gettysburg and the Diary of Anne Frank, which was one of the craziest things that's been said in this whole ordeal. It is amazing to me, by the way, that after all of this, in this meeting this morning, here on January 27th, 2026, Tim Walz said, well, I reiterated what I want. I want federal agents to go away, as though he's never been told, as though he's never heard that the way to make them go away is to open the jails, to cooperate. This is happening in cities and states around the country. Now, Walz says, well, we are cooperating in the state prisons. Okay, but that's not where the criminal aliens are being picked up. They're in the city and county jails, and he knows that. And Jacob Fry, the mayor of Minneapolis, knows that. The ball is in their court. Will they open the jails and permit an orderly transfer of criminal aliens from city and county jails over to federal officials? That's really the only question here. If they will answer that question in the affirmative, the federal footprint would be reduced immediately. Take a break. More when we come back. It's Scott Jennings on Salem. Common sense for the American people.
Hey, it's Scott. Listen, when I prep for my CNN debates, I need to know exactly where the national conversation is headed. And it turns out it's helpful to know that in your everyday life as well. And that's why I tried out Free Spoke. Now, it's my go-to place for search and for news. When you use Free Spoke, it's a search platform that gives you the full story. You get information from the left, you get it from the right, you get non-mainstream, you get independent journalists, you get podcast insights. What you get from Free Spoke is the full story all in one place. And here's the thing, when you search on Free Spoke, you know they are not going to sell your data. It's quite something, actually. It's fast, it's private, it's unbiased. Free Spoke helps me research topics and make sure that I understand the full picture. You can have this tool as well. Just go to freespoke.com/Jennings to download their app for free. And as an exclusive for my listeners, use promo code Jennings after you download it and get 35% off the premium version. You go ad-free and you unlock deeper elite tools to have control over your information. So don't rely on incomplete information. Take control of your own information environment. See every perspective so you can think for yourself, just like I do before every debate.
When he's not in the Oval Office or owning the libs on CNN, he's here with us. It's the Scott Jennings Show.
It is Tuesday, January 27th. Scott Jennings here on Salem. If you're watching the video feed, sipping my hot throat coat tea. That's what they call it in the business. You drink it and supposedly soothes your vocal cords. I think it's working a little. We'll see how we go for the next hour and a half here. Joining us now on the Scott Jennings Show, Morgan Murphy. Morgan is national security expert, author, U.S. Navy captain retired, former Trump White House national security official, and now a candidate for the U.S. Senate from Alabama. Morgan, welcome to the Scott Jennings Show.
Hey, Scott, it's so great to be with you. Big fan. I love watching you take them all on CNN.
Well, we fight them every day. Thanks for the support out there in Alabama. Morgan, I'm glad you're here because as a Republican candidate, I'm sure you're watching the news about what's going on with immigration and specifically in Minneapolis. You're running for the United States Senate. When voters are asking you in Alabama, what should the president do about this situation in Minnesota? What do you tell them?
Well, I think he's handling it well. He's gotten some cooperation, which is what he wanted all the time. You know, we 2% of ICE arrests occur in Minnesota, and 22% of them occur in Texas. We don't see anything like this coming out of Texas. We just keep seeing it coming out of the Twin Cities. And why is that? You know, when I worked for Trump the last time, I was the press secretary for the Department of War. At that time, it was the Department of Defense. And that was 2020. And we watched, a summer of riots just sweep America. Washington, D.C., I'm sure you remember this, Scott. I mean, it was boarded up like a hurricane was coming. Everything from Tiffany's to Starbucks had plywood on all of the windows. It was a complete it was a complete disaster zone, and the whole country was slipping like that. But if you think back to where that all started, George Floyd, Minneapolis.
Yeah.
There's a common thread here. So the president has, he's moved swiftly there, and he's gotten both the governor and the mayor to begin negotiations. And I think it's a smart strategy. It's what has to happen.
Yeah, we'll see how it develops. Tom Homan is there now. He met with Governor Walz this morning. No word on whether he's met with Minneapolis Mayor Fry. The quickest thing they could do is open the jails, and that would begin to get the illegal alien transfer from the jails to the federal custody. That would, of course, reduce the ICE footprint, but we'll see. We'll keep tracking the news on that. I suspect Tom Homan is there to move quickly. Morgan, I want to get into some national security topics with you, but before we do, why don't you tell us about yourself a little bit? How did you get from the U.S. Navy to the White House to running for the U.S. Senate in Alabama?
Well, I actually started my career as a magazine editor of all things. I worked at Forbes and Vanity Fair back in the 90s and then became executive editor of Southern Living. I joined the Navy Reserve in 1999, 26 years in the Navy, because I love the country. So I was activated 3 times, including once to Afghanistan. But it was in the teens that I began to say, like, what's going on with this country? I was sitting in my kitchen every morning, kind of cussing out the news, just watching the great institutions of my life, the ones I grew up with, start to crumble. And I said to myself, like, if normal people don't go to Washington and fight this, we're going to lose the country. And I really believe that in the past 10 years, we've seen a great movement on the leftist side of the country move to overtake all of the levers of power. They already have, I mean, as you know, more than anybody, they've got the media, they've got the entertainment, they have big tech, they have higher education, they even have, a lot of mainline Protestant, centers of learning. And I really felt like they've captured the major institutions of our government. We saw the IRS, the FBI, the CIA all try to take down a sitting president. So I went up to D.C. to fight, and my first bosses were Chris Miller, the Secretary of Defense, and Kash Patel. And now Director Patel told me after, I think the election was stolen in 2020, he said, Morgan, you need to stay in D.C. and fight. So I went to work for Tommy Tuberville, Senator Tuberville from Alabama. I was his national security advisor. Really proud to work with Coach, and then joined the second Trump administration, helping with the Ukraine, probably the worst portfolio in the White House, the Ukraine-Russia conflict.
So I should have mentioned at the top, the reason you're running for the U.S. Senate is that Tommy Tuberville, U.S. Senator, is actually running for governor, opening up a seat there. So that's the reason you're in this race. And I want to go into my next set of questions for you here that all are in your area of expertise, national security. That was the kind of job you had in the White House. I want to start with Iran. And I want to play a clip here of the president. He did a radio interview in New York City this morning. He was on the Sid Rosenberg show in New York today. This is what the president had to say. I guess he was asked by Sid about sending a military buildup towards Iran. Here's the president, cut 6.
We have a big armada going over there right now, and hopefully we won't have to use it, but it's very powerful and bigger than what we have in Venezuela that we sent over. That worked out so well, and the leadership there is doing a very good job coordinating with us and everything else. But we have a big armada going over there, and we'll see. Hopefully we won't have to use it.
Morgan, when you hear the president and you know the situation going on in Iran right now with the protesters being slaughtered in the streets, what would your advice be to the administration? Is it time for a military intervention?
I think when the president's sending an armada like that, he's sending a carrier strike group. And when you put 4 sovereign acres of U.S. territory off the coast of almost any country, it tends to get people's attention. I mean, just one of our carriers, we have 11, Just one of them hosts more firepower than most European countries. It is an awesome thing to behold. And the technical know-how of our military, as we saw in Venezuela, is incredible. I mean, Venezuela showed that Chinese hardware is just junk, right? It does not pay to get your military hardware off of Temu. The United States military just ripped through that. And I think if you're the Ayatollah, you're watching that thinking, the United States could take me out in a flash. So I think the president is right. My advice would be to move in the show of support. This is an organic revolution. This isn't something started by the CIA. We see hundreds of thousands of Iranians taking to the streets. The former crown prince is cutting videos and encouraging the military to defect. So we're right at, I think, the tipping point. And how powerful for the American president to voice his support for freedom and then show it with a carrier strike group right there in the Gulf.
That voice you're hearing, Morgan Murphy from Alabama, former Trump White House national security official and candidate for the United States Senate. Morgan, you served in the White House as head of public diplomacy for the president's special envoy to Ukraine and Russia. So solving the Ukraine-Russia conflict, this is your area of expertise. Where do you think we are in this? This has kind of gotten shoved to the back pages because of other situations in the world. Is there any hope to get a peace deal between Russia and Ukraine this year?
I think there is. And, with Witkoff leading the charge right now and the president's direct involvement, and then they had a trilateral this last weekend. The trilateral is fancy Washington speak for all three parties sitting down and talking. And that's what the president does so remarkably well. He gets people to talk. And when you think back to Biden, I mean, this is a war, the largest war in Europe. It raged on for 3 years under Biden, and he didn't even talk, not once, to Putin. Well, this president talks, and folks criticize. They said, "Well, it hadn't gone anywhere. It hasn't delivered, an end or a ceasefire in the war." And yes, but we're a lot closer to it than we were for the past 3 years under old Sleepy Joe. So I'm encouraged. Both sides. I mean, you can lead a horse to water, as the old saying goes, but you can't make him drink. But both sides have been given ample reason to stop the fighting. Even my liberal friends acknowledge, no president has done more or offered a better deal to Putin. I mean, he said to Putin, look, we'll let you back in the G7. We'll make it the G8. We'll normalize relations with you. Russia is really not our enemy. We'll buy oil again from you. We'll put you back into the global markets. We'll recognize that the territory you've seized, that you occupy it. We'll do a de facto recognition of that, and we'll bring you back into the global community. That's what my granddad was a judge, and he always said, "Morgan, you got to leave your opponent room to save face." And he's left Putin room to save face and bring peace to this war. And it's a really tough spot for Ukraine. Ukraine just does not have, and I hate to say this, but it's the truth. Ukraine does not have the combat power to regain the territory it's lost, not unless Europe commits troops, and they don't seem anywhere close to doing that.
Yeah, I think you're right about that. You've got to give both leaders of both countries a way to go home and declare victory in some way. You're not going to see Putin waving a white flag. You don't want Zelensky to have to do that. They all, after all, were the victims in this war. So, well, we'll pray for peace in that situation. It's been vexing the president, I know. Let me quickly get your opinion on Greenland. President Trump's been negotiating expanded access to Greenland's territory, especially around American military bases. From a national security standpoint, how important is this Greenland play to overall U.S. military security?
Greenland plays a vital role in our national security. So when you look at our radar arrays, right? So when you look at our missile defense, and we've been running missile defense here in this country for 40 years in a partnership with Canada. And so our radar arrays are in Canada, they're in Alaska, and they're all looking north. And Greenland, is right at the top of the apogee when a missile comes over, and so it could play a very vital role in not only missile defense, Trump's new Golden Dome proposal, but also in critical rare earths, heavy rare earths, of which China controls 90% of the world's processing. The president recognizes that that's an untenable situation, and we have got to fix that. And he's looking at Greenland and the resources that are there. And I think he's right. I mean, American presidents for more than 100 years have been trying to get Greenland, right? Yeah. Trying to get some kind of deal.
All the way back to Seward, all the way back to the 1860s.
That's right.
I mean, it's been an idea. Morgan Murphy, candidate for Senate in Alabama. Thank you for coming on the Scott Jennings Show. We'll have you back, and good luck to you in your campaign. If you want to find Morgan Murphy, go to murphyforsenate.com. We're going to take a quick break. First, a word from our friends at Relief Factor. We are interviewing, as you know, talking to customers of Relief Factor. I've got a story to share with you today. Sandra says, I've been hearing about Relief Factor on the radio for a couple of years, and I finally decided to try it because nothing else was helping my back pain. Then with the 3-week quick start, I went for it. Now I feel like a new person. A new person. That's her own words. You could feel like a new person. You know, I got to tell you, I've been taking Relief Factor. My dad's been taking Relief Factor. I kind of feel like a new person. My dad certainly feels like a new person. Seems to be a running theme through these testimonials. Try it out for yourself. 3-week quick start. See how Relief Factor could be a game changer for you. Call 1-800-4RELIEF or go to relieffactor.com. How would it feel to be out of pain? If you're asking yourself that question, you might find the answer with Relief Factor. It's common sense for the American people. More when we come back. Stay with us.
The very definition of never back down. Here's Scott Jennings.
Last night in Minneapolis, my next guest was on the ground covering the latest violent hotel attack by these radical rioters. I want you to listen to his report from late last night. This is Cut 7.
Another night and another hotel attack. This is becoming a major problem here in Minneapolis, not only for the safety of agents, but just regular guests who are staying at that Spring Hill Suites. Last night, we covered the other hotel riot at the Home 2 Suites by Hilton. So another hotel targeted here. They say Bovino is here, but check out the police line, the batons, gas masks. We do see Minnesota State police here. So.
Joining us now live from Minnesota, that reporter you're hearing there from the Daily Caller News Foundation is Jorge Ventura. Jorge, thanks for calling in. I know you've got a hectic situation you're dealing with in Minneapolis. We are appreciative of your time. What was it like being in the middle of these rioters at these hotels the last 2 nights in Minneapolis?
Hey, Scott, yeah, they've really been, chaotic scenes, large crowds of rioters targeting these hotels at night, normally around 8:30, 9 p.m. And they're bringing all types of also devices to just play loud sounds, banging shovels, banging pots and pans, and then throwing objects and then actually targeting these hotels. So last night we saw the Spring Hill Suites in Maple Grove, just a little bit outside of Minneapolis, where rioters believe that Commander Bovino was staying. They started to actually vandalize the property, and we actually saw the strongest response from local law enforcement, the Maple Grove Police Department coming out in their riot gear, making 26 arrests. But it was a long night. I mean, these demonstrations went on for over 2 hours, and the night before was actually a lot more violent, where a Hilton in Minneapolis was targeted, and those windows were smashed, lobbies destroyed, and federal agents were also assaulted. They received a lot of hits to the head by objects that were thrown. So chaotic scenes right now for federal agents in the Minneapolis area. And so far, Scott, it doesn't seem like it's going to slow down.
So 2 nights ago, Jorge, it looked like the local police were told to stand down or not show up and defend that first hotel attack. But last night, we've seen video of the Minneapolis State Police showing up. Do you believe that the local police are now going to show up and defend federal agents when they are under attack because of the phone call that took place between President Trump and Governor Tim Walz?
I think it's still too early to tell. Yesterday was really the first time we saw, Maple Grove PD come out in really full strength. I mean, just the amount of officers deployed was astonishing. But the night before was alarming. It was that Sunday night in Minneapolis at that Hilton Hotel where those demonstrations went on for over 2 hours, and we didn't see any local police show up and until it actually took federal agents to come in and then clear out that mob and to clear out their own agents from that hotel. And Scott, I also captured this kind of powerful moment where an agent is actually bleeding, and he's actually pleading to us, the journalists there, saying, where is the local PD? And I think that's kind of been the microcosm of the feeling of federal agents here in Minneapolis.
Jorge, I have that, actually. Let's play it. This is cut number 3. Let's play Jorge's reporting here, cut 3.
Oh, my God. Are you okay? I'm fine. Are you okay? I'm fine. This is all right. This is all right. Where's the local PD? That's my question for the press. Okay. Where's the local PD?
You can hear the federal officer there screaming, where is the local PD? Jorge, we got about a minute to go here. You've covered these kinds of rioters in different cities around the country. It looks similar to me to what we saw in other places, say in 2020 and in other campus situations. Are we seeing the same kind of organization, the same kind of tactics, the same kind of gear in Minneapolis that we've seen in other radical progressive riots around the country in your experience?
You know, I think, Scott, here in Minneapolis, the organization is at a whole nother level that I've never seen. The amount of people that are just actively looking for Border Patrol agents, doxing them, looking for their license plates, people just standing on corners and like visualizing and trying to track down any SUV that even looks like a Border Patrol agent. I've never seen an entire city so mobilized against federal agents. And I've been to cities like Portland, and I thought Portland was really the worst of the worst when it came to left-wing violence. But Minneapolis, when it comes to the organization, I've been really taken aback of just how it's at a whole nother level. And I would expect even tonight, Scott, that another hotel would likely be targeted.
That voice you're hearing is Jorge Ventura. He's with the Daily Caller. He is on the ground in Minneapolis. He is doing some of the best embedded reporting. If you're interested in following these violent, radical, well, they're not protesters, they're insurrectionists, follow Jorge. He's online at Ventura Report.
The voice of free speech. The truth delivered. Common sense for the American people. Welcome to the Scott Jennings Show.
Okay, it's Tuesday, January 27th. The Scott Jennings Show continues. This hour, new polling suggests that Trump may be reaching firmer ground with voters on the issue of affordability. We'll unpack that in a bit. And we'll talk to the Republican in New York State who's running to unseat Letitia James as Attorney General. Plus, we'll keep an eye on the breaking news of the day. But first, I want to present a special segment today. I recently traveled to Phoenix, Arizona, where I sat down with Michael Maduro. He's the Chief Operating Officer of Child Help, the nation's leading organization for combating child abuse. You hear me talk about them on the show. We talked at Child Help's national headquarters. I took a tour of the facility. I want you to listen to my special report. I think you'll see why that I am partnering with Child Help, and I'm asking you to support their cause.
Hey, it's Scott Jennings with the Salem Radio Network, and we're in Phoenix, Arizona today with our friend Michael Maduro, the COO, the Chief Operating Officer of Child Help. Now, you're familiar with Child Help because we've been talking about them on our show. Child Help is the nation's leading organization trying to end child abuse in the United States. And Michael, you all operate the National Child Abuse Hotline, which we've told our listeners about. This is Child Help's center here in Phoenix, where children actually come once they have called the hotline and you've identified a child in crisis. Just tell me, what did we just see here? Walk me through this facility. When a child comes here, what happens to them when Child Help gets involved?
These are children who have disclosed that they have been abused, or a mandatory reporter or somebody has identified that there is possible harm to this child, and an appointment has been set up for them to speak with a forensic interviewer and determine what course of action is necessary for their unique case. What we are sitting in is a child-centric environment. So historically, before Child Help, if any child was disclosing abuse or a mandatory reporter was disclosing danger to a child, they would typically need to speak with about 6, 7, 8 different agencies over about a 7, 8, 9-month period of time. What that model really created was re-traumatization of a child who's experienced abuse, loss of evidence for those who offended, and oftentimes if a case went to trial, it was typically the child that was on trial having to defend why there were so many variations to their story, why evidence couldn't be collected and lost. So what Child Help created was a multidisciplinary model of which all of those child protection professionals are operating together as one team under one roof, and an environment that is designed to care for a child. So we are sitting in a playroom that is designed for a child to walk into and get comfortable before they are greeted by a non-uniform, trauma-informed, forensically trained interviewer who's going to bring them into a forensic interview room and capture what transpired and what happened to that child in a manner where an entire team of professionals is watching that in an adjacent monitoring room in real time. Child Help created this hotline because it was needed and it didn't exist. We didn't wait for government or outside funding to come on in to support it. We created it and expected and hoped that communities across America would get behind it. And for the past 45, 46 years, that's exactly what has happened. But the demand is increasing. The need is increasing. And that's why we need your audience and everyone around America to get behind this hotline. Help sponsor the cost of one contact call a month changes the entire dynamic of how we face abuse. One of the elements of moving from call functionality to text and chat capability is the amount of time that our counselors spend on a contact call. So when it's calls, it was typically around 10 minutes that it would take for a counselor to start and end a call with somebody in crises. Text and chat, it's more of like 45 minutes. Okay. So we are getting greater volume of youth, but it is taking each counselor longer from start to finish because of the amount of time that it takes between text and chat communications. That's why we need greater investments to provide greater support. That's where your support is going. It's going to support bringing on those counselors, bringing on those resources for those children in crises. But when that child reaches out, immediately greeted with a professional counselor that immediately is trained and designed to listen to what their situation is and immediately be able to respond. We have had counselors that have been able to stay on the line while emergency dispatch is being done with police and medical to site locations. And we've had other situations where counselors have been able to just talk and engage and de-escalate a situation and everything in between.
A child is in their home. They're being abused. They know they need help. They learn about this hotline, and whether they call or more likely text in or go to the chat, and they talk to someone. Take us from that moment when that first contact is made to the point where they get here to safety.
So first and foremost, a child that has found the courage, and that's what it is, it's courage. Yeah. The courage to speak to a safe adult or maybe even pick up their own phone and reach out is bravery like you'll never see in a child ever again. But when they do that, they are immediately filled with fear and insecurity. Is anybody going to believe me?
Right.
Is what I'm going to be say taken for truth? Am I going to get in trouble? Is there going to be further harm done to me or to a sibling or to another parent? These are the immediate fears and concerns that these children have that they have to overcome. How they overcome that is by putting in that text, by putting in that chat, because what they are immediately meted and greeted with is a professional counselor. And our wait times is less than 90 seconds. So
90 seconds.
90 seconds.
So they send that first message, and almost instantly, someone who's trained to do it is right there saying, how can I help you?
Exactly right. But that's also why we need the community to get involved with us, because the more demand that comes in, the longer those wait times can be. And we don't want those wait times to get longer, because 90 seconds still feels like eternity for a child in crises, right? We want to try to get those wait times less and less. That's what your $27 is going to support, making sure that we can provide more counselors, greater availability.
$27 sponsors a call.
For a child in crises with a professional counselor who's going to guide that child to what's necessary, what's needed, what resources are available to them, how to break and intervene in the cycle of abuse that either they are experiencing or they are witnessing. $27 saves a child.
Yeah.
It's that simple.
It is that simple. You know, one thing I'm learning here is that it's everyone's responsibility. It's families, it's communities, it's law enforcement, it's healthcare professionals, you know, the entirety of a community and everything that makes up that community. We all have a role to play, and the role that our listeners can play is very simple. $27 sponsors a single call to the hotline. $135 sponsors 5 calls. You can go to childhelp.org/Scott and make that donation today. You can do it one time. You can set up a recurring donation. But honestly, $27 to save a child's life, to rescue a child from hell on earth, that's a pretty good deal. And I think it also speaks to just how efficient the donations are used here. You're one of the best charities in the country when it relates to the ratio of how much your donation goes to services versus overhead.
And that's always been from our inception. Our founders have always wanted to make sure that we maximize every dollar for programmatic services and delivery because the children come first. The children need it the most. Those monthly recurring donations are vital.
Tell us one more time the volume, because what's going on now, you have these partnerships with Google and Meta and these online companies. That's increasing awareness of the hotline, which is also increasing the volume. And the number of children who have abuse situations, who are in crisis, it's going up exponentially. And so the volume of this is just out of hand in the United States and around the world.
We're seeing double-digit increases month over month from last year on volume to our hotline alone. In our 66-year history, we have directly impacted the lives of more than 14 million children. Since July 1 of 2025, we have directly served more than 130,000 children.
You can make a huge difference. Go to childhelp.org/Scott, make a $27 donation and save one child on this hotline. $135 is 5 calls sponsored. That's 5 children that you can save. The best thing you can do is set up a recurring donation. Michael Maduro, you are the Chief Operating Officer of Child Help. You are a national leader on this topic. Your model here is being replicated in states and countries around the world. And our listeners here at the Scott Jennings Show, I hope, will find it in their heart to help you. Thanks for having me in today.
Thank you so much.
Thanks, Michael.
Appreciate you.
All right, my special thanks to Michael Maduro from Child Help for the tour there in Phoenix and all the special insights that we were able to get. Quick word from our friends at Relief Factor. As you know, we've been talking to Relief Factor customers. I'd like to hear from one today. This is Brian from Alabama. How did it work for him?
Hello, my name is Brian Delatry, and I started taking Relief Factor just about a year ago. I was having chronic knee pain. Over time, it just got worse and worse. Just walking downstairs was painful. Well, since I've taken Relief Factor, the results have been just amazing. I actually walk 4 miles a day, 5 to 6 days a week. No pain at all going downstairs. Very active playing golf, and it's been really just unbelievable in the change I've had in the pain in my knee. You know, hope that someone who's experienced the same type of pain gives Relief Factor a try. And I guarantee if you get the results that I have, you'll be very happy. I'm going to continue using the product because I am now pain-free.
Call 1-800-4RELIEF or go to relieffactor.com to start your 3-week quick start today. More when we come back. It's Scott Jennings here on Salem.
Hey, Scott Jennings here. I want to personally invite you to join me, along with my friend Mike Gallagher, for a powerful week on the Gulf of America cruise, November 14th through November 21st, 2026. That's this year. We'll cruise through crystal blue waters, visit incredible ports like Half Moon Cay and Cozumel, and enjoy the first-class hospitality of a luxury cruise ship. All week long, you'll have time with us. You'll do meet and greets, photo opportunities, Q&A sessions, and the chance to hear behind-the-scenes stories that you can't or won't hear on the air. You'll also be immersed in inspiring keynote speeches and in-depth sessions as we enjoy real connection designed to strengthen your resolve as we mark the 250th anniversary of our great nation. Don't miss this. Sign up today. Look forward to cruising the Caribbean with like-minded people who care deeply about our country. Reserve your cabin today by clicking the link or scanning this QR code.
Fighting for free speech and Western civilization. This is the Scott Jennings Show.
Coming up here in just a few minutes, bottom of the hour, we've got Saritha Comatoretti coming on. She's the Republican trying to unseat Letitia James in New York. I'm meeting her for the first time today. I'm anxious to see what she has to say. We've got a little breaking news into the Scott Jennings Show. This from KVOA News in Arizona. A shooting incident occurred early this morning near milepost 15 on Aravaca Road. Emergency responders showed up around 7:30, and a shooting there had involved a Border Patrol officer. So this is another shooting involving the U.S. Border Patrol, this one in Arizona. When the emergency responders arrived, they found an individual in custody and in critical condition. Sounds like perhaps that was the person that was shot. Immediate medical care was provided. The patient was transferred to a local medical helicopter for a rapid transport to a regional trauma center. There are more Border Patrol officers on the scene now. The Pima County Sheriff's Department and the FBI are assisting in the investigation. So we're going to keep an eye on that. Border Patrol shooting, this one in Arizona. We don't have any more details beyond what I just gave you. We don't know who was shot. We don't know what was going on out there, but we'll track this story. It's common sense for the American people. Scott Jennings is here on Salem. I did get other breaking news into the show. Caroline burst into the studio, and she said, we're down to our last bag of freshly brewed tea. We have one bag. We'll see if we can get another half an hour out of the tea bags here on the Scott Jennings Show. I'm going to get a drink here. We're fighting it today, but we're fighting the good fight. I did want to talk a couple of minutes, by the way, about this issue of affordability. I was perusing the New York Times Siena poll that came out the other day, and a lot was made about Trump's approval and this and that. But they asked voters their feelings on affordability. They asked them, do you think the following items are unaffordable, somewhat affordable, or mostly affordable? Interesting question. I don't think I've ever seen this before. Did you know that the only two things that scored as unaffordable, meaning a majority of Americans said unaffordable, were education and housing? Education's obvious. Housing is also obvious. We have a housing shortage. Prices are high. Interest rates are high. But on everything else, transportation was listed as the most affordable. By a 53-point margin, voters said it was more affordable. Utilities, 53-point margin, affordable. Food, 47-point margin, voters said affordable. Groceries, by a 43-point margin, voters said affordable. Having a family, by a 7-point margin, voters said affordable. Health care, even on the topic of health care, by a 3-point margin, voters said affordable. So that one was a little more split. But you would think even on health care, given all the talk that's been in the news about Obamacare premiums and these subsidies and everything else, you would expect that to be way underwater. But it wasn't. So think about what I just said for a second. Transportation, utilities, food, groceries, having a family, and health care. More Americans believe those things to be affordable than believe them to be unaffordable. Now, I'm only moderately good at math, but it would seem to me that if that's true, and if these voter sentiments are an accurate reflection of what people think, A, that's going to inure to Donald Trump and the Republican benefit in the 2026 midterms, particularly if they keep going in the right direction. And B, what you are being told about how people view their own personal economic situation may be, shall we say, embellished for political narrative purposes. To hear the media, the political media tell it, we're living through another Great Depression. But according to this polling from the New York Times, transportation, utilities, food, groceries, having a family, health care, more Americans say these things are affordable. Now, Trump does need to work on housing, and they are doing that, and I expect that'll be part of the budget reconciliation package this year. And education, well, nobody blames Trump for college prices. They can blame themselves. Anyway, just some food for thought. When we come back, the Republican running to unseat Letitia James is here.
Now, for America's favorite pundit, it's Scott Jennings.
All right, it's Tuesday, January 27th. Tracking all the breaking news here for Salem. It's common sense for the American people. Scott Jennings is with you on a cold, cold day in our nation's capital. Chances are, wherever you are, it's cold too. Florida not included. Although I think it's going to get cold down there too. You know, if you made a list of the 4 or 5 Democrats in America that Republicans would most like to see lose their next election, I suspect on almost everybody's list, Letitia James, the current Attorney General of New York, would appear. My next guest is going to try to do that in November. She has had a long career in public service, which includes serving as a federal prosecutor in the Eastern District of New York. She was the chief of staff of the Drug Enforcement Administration. She clerked for the Honorable Brett Kavanaugh on the U.S. Court of Appeals for the D.C. Circuit before he went to the Supreme Court. Bottom line, my next guest has a long career in the law and in locking up criminals. Joining us now, Saritha Kamatareddy, who is running for Attorney General in New York. Saritha, welcome to the Scott Jennings Show.
Thank you, Scott. It's great to be here.
Well, I'm glad you're joining us today. I suspect you're going to find Republicans all over this country interested in what you have to say because of who you are running against in New York. So tell us a little about yourself. I gave your resume. Very impressive. How is it that you came to decide in the year of our Lord, 2026, I'm going to run for office in New York?
Well, it's pretty simple, Scott. You know, I was born in Brooklyn. I love New York. I came back here to be a federal prosecutor, which I was for more than a decade. I prosecuted terrorists. You know, when I was in college, 9/11 happened my first week of college, and that led me to become a terrorism prosecutor because I wanted to do my part to fight terrorism. So I went after leaders in Al-Qaeda, ISIS, and the Mexican drug cartels, and that was my career. I became chief of staff of the DEA. President Trump nominated me to be a judge. I have an entire career in public service and public safety. But in the meantime, what I've seen in the communities around me here in New York is that New York has gotten less safe. In the 5 years that Letitia James has been in office, crime in New York State is up 26%. Drug deaths are up 63%. It has not served New Yorkers. Her political agenda, her use of that office purely for political purposes has led to New York suffering, and I'm tired of it. I know I can do something about that. I'm an excellent prosecutor, I'm an excellent professional, and I'm the most qualified person for that job. That's why I decided to run. I wanted to make sure my kids and my community, my state, are safe.
That's an excellent pitch for Attorney General in New York. I want to get into a little bit more your views on crime in New York and in New York City. You note that crime has gone up on the watch of Letitia James. And it seems like, you know, we hear a lot of stories that it's sort of just a revolving door in the justice system up there. Violent people go in, they come right back out, they're committing crimes. I mean, the number one predictor of whether you will commit violence is, have you already committed violence? Tell us, if you get elected Attorney General, what will be your actions to stop this revolving door and stop this trend in New York City?
Scott, you know, that revolving door is very real. Let me tell you, I was in court, in federal court, just back in August. I was taking a duty day, as they call it, when you take whatever comes in the door. And I had a guy come in the door, he had 27 priors. He was out on probation for whatever reason, and he had missed an appointment. So the NYPD went to look for him. They found him with a fentanyl, cocaine, heroin, and a loaded firearm, dealing drugs across the street from a middle school. When he was prosecuted in the state, he got 6 months in state prison and was released. And they brought him to federal court to see if we could do something about that. Now, if you ask a New Yorker, doesn't matter whether they're a Republican, an independent, or a Democrat, Most New Yorkers would tell you that is unacceptable. That is not a person who should be let out to go back across the street from a middle school dealing drugs with a loaded gun. But that's what's happening in New York right now. And that's the problem. And it's a problem not just in New York City, it's a problem in every county in the state. Everywhere I go, I've been traveling for the last 6 weeks across the state. I hear stories of repeat offenders out on the street that hurt someone. It's a problem everywhere in the state. What can we do about it? There's a lot we can do about it. First, we can prosecute crime to the fullest extent of the law. Right now, you have various DAs in New York who are tying the hands of their own prosecutors. They're telling them not to charge them with what they actually did, to charge them with something less. They're telling them not to ask for jail time. On day one as Attorney General, I will reverse those policies. That's something that an Attorney General can do and should do. You just need a prosecutor as Attorney General. We also need to fight for better bail laws. New York bail laws are completely unreasonable. It's part of the reason why people are getting out of jail. It's part of the reason why, in some cases, judges don't even have an option to put people in jail when they're dangerous, because New York is the only state in the country that does not allow judges to consider public safety when determining whether to put someone in jail before trial. So it's totally out of line with common sense. It's totally out of line with the rest of the country, and we need to change those laws. We need an Attorney General who's going to fight for changing those laws.
That voice you're hearing on the show today, Saritha Kamatareddy, she's the Republican running against Letitia James for Attorney General in New York. You know, I talk to cops all over the country, and one of the things I hear, New York, you name it, but particularly in blue jurisdictions, is that this issue of local prosecutors and local judges who are working very hard to get violent people out of jail and back onto the streets. I assume before you launched this campaign, you yourself were in touch with law enforcement in New York City and around the state. Is this something you're hearing? Are the cops fed up with these local prosecutors and judges and other people involved in the system who just work overtime for criminals and seem to care not about their victims?
You know, I've had the privilege of working with all kinds of federal law enforcement and also with local law enforcement because I served in the Joint Terrorism Task Force for more than a decade. So we work closely with FBI, other federal agencies, NYPD, New York State Police. And yes, I have talked to them. And I'll tell you, folks are tired of having the world be upside down, which is what happened back in 2020. Right now, for some reason, cops are the bad guys, criminals are the good guys, and everyone else is left fending for themselves. That doesn't make any sense. We've got to come back to a place where we can have some trust and faith in law enforcement and respect for the role that they have. If we have disagreements on policy, we have those disagreements in court or in Congress, not on the street. And we got to get back to a place where we support our law enforcement. Right now in New York, we have a chief law enforcement officer who is anti-law enforcement. That doesn't work. It's not good for anyone. New Yorkers, and I think all Americans, want the law enforced in a way that's ethical, in a way that's humane, but they want the law enforced. And to do that, we need to support our law enforcement. You can have the best cops in the world, and in New York, we do. We have the best cops in the world. But if you don't have prosecutors who follow through with that, then those same criminals that the cops spend so much time and energy and risk their lives to get off the street end up back on the street later the same day. It's not fair to the law enforcement, and it's not fair to our citizens.
Saritha, I want to get your reaction to this. This is the new mayor of New York City, Mamdani. He is one of the people who has no respect for law enforcement. In fact, right now, he and other Democrats are trying to abolish ICE, which is federal law enforcement. Here's cut number 5, Mamdani.
I think that there are too many Americans who are being asked to not believe their own eyes, not believe their own ears, not believe their own realities. And people want to hear the truth. They want to see the truth. And that's why I described that as a murder, because there's no other way to watch that video and come to a different conclusion. And we know that the fear that so many are living with in Minneapolis, it's a fear that New Yorkers are also living with, a fear of being terrorized. And I will do everything in my power to ensure that we do not see that take place in New York City. And I've also said clearly to the president that these ICE raids, they are cruel, they are inhumane, they do nothing to serve the interests of public safety.
Saritha, what say you? Is it cruel to simply enforce existing federal immigration law? What do you think about the mayor's comments?
Listen, the idea that ICE does not serve public safety, it's not true. As I said, I served with a number of federal agencies, shoulder to shoulder, with FBI and ICE and DEA on task forces that targeted the worst of the worst. ICE helped investigate and prosecute leaders in ISIS, in the drug cartels, and in transnational organizations, everyone from MS-13 to El Chapo. The work that they have done has helped keep New Yorkers safer. Now, the problem that we're seeing, part of the problem is that, as we saw on the Joint Terrorism Task Force, ICE does its best work when it's able to work with other agencies, when it's able to work with state and local law enforcement. We don't want to have people out in communities, in raids, if an alternative to that is to actually have them have an orderly handover of a criminal alien from criminal custody to immigration custody. How do you do that? It's very simple. You allow ICE agents to stand by state jails so that when someone who has been convicted of a crime is walking out the door because they finished their sentence, the ICE agent is permitted to take custody in an orderly, organized, fair manner and initiate deportation proceedings. The problem is, in sanctuary cities and sanctuary states, that's not allowed. And so instead, we're releasing criminals into the community, and ICE has to go into the community to go find them. That's not safe for anyone. It puts the community and the officers in danger. No one should want that. I think at the end of the day, people want the laws enforced. They want to get the worst of the worst. And the way to do that is to have state and local officials work with federal officials hand in hand so that we have an ethical and proper enforcement of the laws.
Saritha Kamatareddy, the Republican running to unseat Letitia James for Attorney General in New York. Where can people find you? I suspect there are Republicans all over this country who would like to find you. Where do they go to help you out on the internet?
Well, thank you for asking, Scott. My website is Saritha, Saritha, for NewYork.com. You can find more about me there. We'd love to hear from you. Anyone has questions, ideas. We have to win in November to restore justice and restore safety in New York, and we're going to do that. We'll do it with your support.
That voice, Saritha Kamatareddy. She's the Republican running for Attorney General in New York. We'll keep tabs on your campaign. You got a lot of fans out there. I'm getting text messages. People are like, fire emoji, fire them. That's what I'm getting on my phone right now. Thanks for coming on the show. We're going to take a break. When we come back, President Trump signed a big executive order today trying to goose the rebuilding of the damaged properties in L.A. after the fires. Stay with us to find out more about it.
He's the author of the best-selling book, A Revolution of Common Sense. Here's Scott Jennings.
Home stretch on Tuesday, January 27th. Scott Jennings here on Salem. More breaking news today, a big scoop that has to do with getting houses built in the wake of the L.A. wildfires a year ago. Joining us on the line is Steve Nelson. He is the chief Washington correspondent for the New York Post. He has a story today, broke the story on a new executive order signed by President Trump on this topic. Stephen, welcome to the show. Thanks for coming on. Tell us, what did the president do this morning to engage in helping people rebuild their homes in Los Angeles?
Right. Well, thank you very much for having me. So we interviewed President Trump for the launch of the California Post this week. And President Trump, in our presence, signed an executive order which intends to speed up the process of rebuilding homes that were destroyed by wildfires last year in Los Angeles. And he's doing this by ordering the Small Business Administration and FEMA to draw up regulations and adopt them within 90 days, allowing builders to self-certify to the federal government that they're complying with state and local regulations. This is an attempt to get around the burdensome state and local approval processes. There were about 13,000 homes destroyed last year in the Eaton and Palisades fires, and very few of the homeowners have actually gotten permission to rebuild. So President Trump says the federal government is going to preempt state and local zoning regulations and processes and speed this up by just allowing builders to certify to the government that they're complying with the rules.
Yeah, according to your story, wildfires destroyed an estimated 16,000 structures, but Los Angeles city and county officials have only issued 2,600 permits so far to rebuild. Less than 15% of all homes destroyed by the fires have received necessary approvals to move forward. This is according to the Trump administration. My first question is, what will Gavin Newsom's reaction to this be? I assume he will argue that Donald Trump doesn't have the authority to do this. What's your reporting say about that?
Right, and just for the clarification for your listeners, the numbers are a little bit fuzzy because not all structures are residences. And
right.
City officials have different numbers than the state officials for the number of building permits. Gavin Newsom's number is actually lower. It's about 1,600. But Newsom is pushing back on this. He claims that, the reason that the vast majority of people don't have building permits is because they don't have the money to rebuild. His spokesperson called the president a, quote, clueless idiot who believes that the government can override local processes, which gets us to the question of whether it's legal. And that's a matter that's likely to be decided by the courts. But the federal government does, in some circumstances, have the ability to preempt local zoning processes. So we're certainly going to find out whether or not the courts uphold this. But there's a clear federal present to do this.
All right. Also tucked into this executive order, it says the federal government is going to audit the nearly $3 billion hazard mitigation grant program fund that was given to the state to help the recovery efforts to see if these funds have been used properly. How are California officials going to take to being audited? What do you think they're going to find in this audit?
Well, President Trump announced this as he argues that California may have a bigger fraud issue than Minnesota. Of course, he's talked a lot about social services being ripped off there by Somali American immigrants. He says that he suspects that the fraud is much larger in California. And we certainly saw significant fraud there with the unemployment system during the pandemic. And I think the suspicion here is that some of the funds may have been misspent. President Trump is clearly needling Gavin Newsom as head of his anticipated presidential campaign. And these fraud issues can certainly dog officials. It did with President Biden's labor secretary, as we can remember.
That voice you're hearing, that of Stephen Nelson. He is the chief Washington correspondent for both the New York and the brand new California Post. Stephen, congratulations on launching the California Post. And this is the first day of the newspaper, yes?
It is. And we broke other exciting news with President Trump. He's also considering an effort to cap state gas taxes. California has the highest. So we made a lot of news, and please visit our website to read all of our stories.
And what is the handle for the California Post?
Well, you can find all of them on nypost.com.
Go to nypost.com, and you have a special section for California. Going to give the L.A. Times and other newspapers and media properties out in California a run for their money. That was Stephen Nelson, chief Washington correspondent for the New York Post, also writing for the brand new California Post. You can find him on X at Stephen Nelson 10. Thanks for joining us. We're out of time today. We'll be back tomorrow.